Hi, I'm Batsheva Frankel from Overthrowing Education, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to now. Shows on the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Hey, welcome back. Steve here, and today I'm talking with Shaunak Roy. He's the founder and CEO of Yellowdig, a learning platform designed to help college and universities, K-12 schools, and corporate organizations. Oh, what a great conversation. So much to learn, and I can't thank you enough for listening. But you know what would be really cool is if you went to my website, stephenmiletto.com/reviews, and left a review. Could you do that for me? Thanks so much. You're awesome. Enjoy the show. Boone Titanium Rings, found on the web at boonrings.com, is an affiliate partner of Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12. And I'm also a customer. I have this really cool ring that's got these carved pistons and stars in it. I love it. They make rings of titanium that are carved, laser cut, and engraved, as well as they have inlays of many types of materials like meteorite, acrylic, wood, carbon fiber, and so many other types. They also have special collections that are incredible designs. One of the top sellers are the Gamer Rings, the Stealth Series, and the Black Zirconium. As a note, they also make earrings, pendants, cufflinks, and for you musicians, they make cool trumpet mouthpieces. Love it. Go to boonrings.com and at checkout use my code, capital T, capital L, capital K, number 12, and you'll get 10% off your purchase. So go check them out. I love my ring, and I know that you will love yours.
You are listening to Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12, a podcast for educators, helping you help kids achieve their dreams. And now here's Steve with this week's show.
Shaunak Roy is the founder and CEO of Yellowdig. Yellowdig is a community-driven, active learning platform adopted by over 130 colleges and universities, K-12 schools, and corporate training clients. Yellowdig's mission is to transform every classroom into an active, social, and experiential learning community. Shaunak graduated with a degree in mechanical engineering from IIT Bombay and completed his graduate studies at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, which is really cool, by the way. Prior to founding Yellowdig, Shaunak spent a decade advising global companies on technology, strategy, and growth. Shaunak, it's so great that you're here today. Thanks for joining me today, and say hi to everyone.
Hello, everybody. Stephen, great to be here.
Well, I'm glad to have you here, and this is awesome talking with you. And let's start by explaining what Yellowdig is. I mean, what's its why? What's its purpose?
So our purpose is to make learning more enjoyable and fun. As you said, it's a social emotional learning platform, which, creates communities in every learning environment. Could it be a classroom? You can think of it like a classroom engagement tool. But the ultimate goal for us is to make learning more fun and more experiential for the learners.
That's awesome. Where'd the inspiration come from?
My story is, I kind of spent almost a decade in various corporate roles. And, back in 2015, I kind of decided that I wanted to start my own company. That has been a goal for a long time. Growing up, my dad was an entrepreneur himself. So I kind of saw growing up, saw him build things, and I wanted to build something on my own. So when I started Yellowdig, one of my questions was, okay, what I'm passionate about, something that I can actually put years and years to build it, because I knew that it's going to take a long time. And I am passionate about education. Education is something that has got me here. I grew up in India, came all the way from, grew up in India, did my schooling there, came to the US, did my studies, and worked here for a bunch of years. Worked around the world in 3 other continents. So I kind of always see myself as a lifelong learner, and I enjoy the process of learning. And I also felt that sometimes, at least for myself, I went through a lot of experiences where I learned, but I didn't quite enjoy it, especially being in those classrooms. And I thought that maybe technology, given where we are in this kind of era where everything in the world, in some sense, is being driven by technology. If you think about e-commerce or, education, starting to get into technology, but so many sectors, every sector is being impacted by technology. So I thought that how can I apply technology, which is my another love, into better learning? And that was the kind of, I would say, the origination story of Yellowdig.
Very cool. Very cool. It's really neat when someone is able to make a a dream, a thought, an idea become real. And when you went live on that website the first time, kind of go, kind of geek out a little bit. All right.
It took us a long time though. I would say it started with a dream, and then kind of over time it morphed into some sort of a mission. And we have been at it for the last 7 and almost getting into 8 years now. And I'm glad that now we have, put together a company, a team, clients who see some value in our product and services. So excited about it. And, but yeah, it was a long journey in some sense to come to this point.
That's awesome. So cool. Do you look at, I know I said in the introduction about the different groups that you that you focus on, but do you look at connecting with students, or are you more focused on schools and universities, or, the training with the other organizations?
Yeah, so we love to connect with students because, one of the things we have done in our platform is to design it for the students. If you think about education technology, going back to learning management systems and various other systems that schools, universities, companies have even adopted, were designed for the instructor or sometimes the administration to solve problems around how do I deliver, let's say, online learning, or how do I keep a system of records, maybe grades or people who are taking, which students are taking which courses. That was a big portion of how they designed those systems. When we started with Yellowdig, one of the things we kind of were quite sure about is that we want to design just for the students and then work backwards to make it useful and valuable for the instructors, for the teachers, and then more valuable for the institution. So that is why we always love to talk to students. Just yesterday, we had a webinar where we invited students from like 4 different universities, come and just hang out with us for an hour and talk about their feelings about using Yellowdig. And we always find that we learn a lot more from those conversations and many other conversations that we have with instructors and institutions.
That's cool. I bet it is neat listening to them talk and converse about what's going on, and those are always awesome opportunities, I think. So very cool. All right. So if I'm a student, or if I'm a school, or if I'm a corporate entity, what type of technology do I have to have? Do I have some whole bunch of stuff, or what is it you gotta have to use this?
Yeah, no, we make it very simple when it comes to the technology. Most of the work happens is to adopt the technology to see the impact that you would want to see, which is where we work with the institution, the instructors, and the schools. So just to give an example, the way Yellowdig is designed is it does not change the existing course design. So instructors have been designing any courses, and we can take any subject area. It kind of iterates over the time, and it has a lot of personality of that instructor baked into that design, a lot of the cases. So our approach is not to change that, because that takes a lot of effort, a lot of redesign, but just simply to add on top of that. So Yellowdig forms this 24/7 community where the students can interact with one another, share ideas, answer questions, do debates, get feedback from the instructor whenever they want to, almost on an organic way. Doesn't matter what subject area they're actually teaching and learning in that moment. So just because it is almost like an add-on to any course or any program, it's easy to implement. So from a kind of nuts and bolts standpoint, we can integrate our platform with an existing learning management system that the school is using. Could be Canvas, Blackboard, Sakai, Moodle, any of them, if they're using one, so that the students just have to click a button and they join the community, the Yellowdig community for that particular course or program. We already take them there, and it's already designed based on that course, and I can get into that. So that's a very seamless integration. But if you're not using any LMS, if you're just teaching, over Zoom, you can use us as a standalone platform where, we will create a community, and that will become almost like your area where students will, actually have the interaction. And more importantly, not synchronously, more asynchronously. So given it's a community, if you are with your students in a classroom, you are already having that interaction, and, you cannot really replace a live interaction or an interaction over Zoom. So You can still use Yellowdig on the side, but it's not the primary purpose of the platform. The primary purpose is connecting the learners asynchronously under a certain set of best practices, which are all kind of baked into our design to be able to having this like organic 24/7 engagement that most of our students are used to, by the way. All of them live in the social world. It's just that when it comes to classes, they don't view classrooms like that. They view classroom as somewhere I just appear, do my thing, and then I go back to my Twitter or LinkedIn, or not LinkedIn per se, but most maybe TikTok or some other platform. So we're using the behavior they're already used to being in the social world, but kind of applying into the course design so that they are more engaged into those courses.
That is excellent, and it's cool thinking about this, because we're going to get to some questions in a little bit about technology and how it's changed, kind of what we do in education. But I love this talk here. This is awesome. So I got to ask this. I mean, if you're it's got to be a little bit different for each of the levels, but for the most part, I mean, how do you get started if you wanted to, if someone listening today is going, I want to check this out, how do they get started once they go and look and say, this is for me?
So what you do is go to our website, which is yellowdig.co, and you will find a way to submit a request to get access. There is no way for you to actually sign up from the website. There's something we might launch in the next couple of years, but right now you have to contact us, and we will reach out. One of our team members will reach out and set it up for you. It takes literally half an hour to kind of get going. It's very simple, but we have an academic team that will work with you to kind of make sure that the technology part is easy, but the implementation and the management of that is kind of well designed. So we have a course that we typically recommend that you can take asynchronously on your own and kind of get to know the platform, get to know how it works and how it can, impact your students.
Excellent. So I got to ask, do you have like more schools, universities, or do you do a lot of, corporate training? Is there something that's more, you do more of than the other, or is it all about the same?
It's designed in a way so that it can work in every environment. Doesn't matter the age group of the students that you're teaching or you're learning. It doesn't matter because, fundamentally, we as humans love to learn as a group and, exchange knowledge with one another. So we have now use cases across the board, from universities to K-12 to corporate training. From an adoption standpoint, we actually started with universities. That was our biggest kind of adoption space. And the way we got into K-12 is an interesting story, actually. We were not selling into schools, but a lot of our teachers were doing their certifications or their master's programs in School of Education in various schools that are using us. They actually got introduced to Yellowdig through those schools when they were actually students, and they actually brought it to their own classrooms in K-12. That's something that kind of happened in the last couple of years, and we are starting to kind of do more with K-12 now as a result.
That's excellent. It's always nice when you have a nice little side benefit that happens all of a sudden and that makes sense too. I can see the students going, hey, we're using it in college. Why can't we use this in the schools we're working in? So very cool.
Yeah, 100%. that's, and we love it because, when our students actually bring it, they already know the platform, so they can really implement in the right way based on their environment. So it's a win-win.
That is awesome. So let's kind of shift now to some other topics. That's kind of the world that Yellowdig exists in. One of the things that you guys talk about is you talk about active and engaged learning. What is that, and why does it matter?
So the interesting thing is this, and I'll tell you the story. I have two daughters. I have a 7-year and a 12-year-old, and I've always seen this, that when they are playing games, like video games is a big thing. They always love to play games. There's so many games they to play, and they're always excited about it, right? They're always involved. They're not just sitting and watching. They're kind of playing, they're failing, and they're figuring it out and kind of how to win that level, go to the next level. And it's always exciting. Like, it's almost like hard to pull them out of it. And it's not mine. Everybody, all my friends and people I speak with, they all have that experience with their kids, their children. But when it comes to do that assignment for your class, submit it, they will wait till the last moment, like till it's due. It's almost like there's no fun involved. I just have to do it to get a grade, right? If I don't do it, I won't get a grade, right? So that's the feeling typically. And one of the reasons is that a lot of classroom environments are very passive in nature. And no offense to instructors, teachers, because I think our teachers does a wonderful job. but it's very, very hard to get everybody engaged, every student engaged, right? I mean, our teachers are focused in the classroom, trying to make it fun, various ways. And there's a tremendous amount of work that goes on to make those learning environments active, as we all know. But it's almost impossible the moment the students leave the classroom, right? I mean, if you give them an assignment, just do it by Sunday night. I mean, there has to be something in that assignment that is tremendously exciting. I mean, sometimes there are, but it's very, very hard to do. We solve that problem. So what we do is that, given there is a community involved, so all the students are always talking to one another. So it's naturally an engaging environment because they get to hear from their classmates in our platform. The other thing we have done is that we have a patent on it, which is we have gamified that experience, almost like a video game, where you want points for participation. So there's no judgment involved. Nobody gets a grade because they participated in our platform, but they get a point just for the effort they put in. And what we have found is that drives very interesting behavior patterns in that any classroom environment, because people start to get creative. They start to share things that are interesting to their peers, not only the instructors. And given it's asynchronous, there's a lot more time available. Like somebody can actually write up something, that may or may not be able to speak up in the classroom, right? Given, maybe like shy or whatever reason, they cannot speak up. And we know that lots of those things happen in those classrooms, but those students become more vocal in our platform. So all of that together drives this whole active, engaged environment that doesn't come together. So a couple of things we do, like more than half the students actually have spoken with everybody else in the classroom. So we try to drive more peer-to-peer interaction in our platform through gamification. We find students are more sharing their experiences in terms of projects that they're working on, or there's something they read because of one of the projects or something they heard in the class. And that kind of makes them more involved because they are now more committed, because it's no longer like, oh, I go to my classroom and do my homework. Now I actually see how this is connected to whatever life I'm living in or whatever projects I'm working on. So that's how we try to drive that engagement environment, and especially doing it asynchronously give us a lot more opportunity to reach as many students as possible.
That's excellent. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's one of the things, forever is that teachers have talked about trying to get kids engaged in the classroom, and it's funny because you're also talking about not just kids, you're talking about university kids, and you're also talking about however the adults exist in the rest of whatever other part of the world is connected to you. And I love that, because you got to find some way to make them do more than just like they're doing to get it done, I guess.
Yeah. And, the other interesting thing, this is what we find, given we are, working with so many schools now, is there's always this hesitation from instructors that maybe the kids are not going to do, or the students are not going to really contribute if they have an opportunity, primarily because a lot of instructors see this habit in students where they would not do the bare minimum, right? So always the question is that if I give too much stuff, maybe the top 10% will do it, but the bottom 30% would not even come and touch. And so there is a huge discrimination that's going to happen in my class. So maybe I design for the bare minimum so that, everybody does something, which is okay, but then also it reduces the opportunities of like really making it interesting. But interestingly, a very key dynamic we see in our platform is once the students have more agency around sharing and actually contributing without being judged, we don't give grades on contribution. The grades are essentially tied to high quality contributions. Those teachers can assign like badges and accolades and things like that. We see much more innovation happening, actually. Kids who are like typically unsure of themselves, that whether they can actually speak up something and say something interesting, are suddenly finding that they can, and they may have something interesting to say because maybe 10 other kids actually liked what they had to share. That never has happened to them, right? So this dynamic is very interesting. And we are finding that more agency leads to really good outcomes, as long as it's in a controlled environment, which is what we create in Yellowdig.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I gotta ask you this, because one of the things in the it's difficulty out there is the types of tech that might be available in some schools. So, why do you think most schools are still using old, unfriendly tech, and what can be done about it?
That's a very good question. And I've been trying to figure that out as well. The challenge if you think about the side of the school, right? The challenge is that, of course, there are budget limitations, right? I mean, there is always that question about whether there's budget to try new things, but it's also scaling up existing technology in the right way. Like a lot of schools have LMS, but they have a hard time to make that, used by a lot of instructors because there's a lot of training. So I think there are two pieces to that. One piece is to be able to adopt new technology which are safe to use, which are compliant. Like, for example, we are FERPA compliant, ADA compliant, and data security compliant, so that the data that we collect on the students are never used for something which is not for teaching and learning that particular student. So that piece has to be well kind of designed. And there are companies like us which are doing that now, which are building technology just for learners, so that traditional B2B companies like Facebook, LinkedIn hasn't done it, right? Which is why you can't use those platforms, but that's happening more and more. The other piece I see is the training, which is, even though you have good technologies available, doesn't mean that's going to have the right impact on the students. And that piece around actually having programs and professional development opportunities for the students and for the instructors to be able to use a variety of tools and design the right experience for them is non-trivial. And I think a lot of schools have underinvested in that area for a long time. And we are seeing that's kind of changing fast, by the way. I think there's a lot of learning happening right now. So I would say, we are on the right path. It's just that we have to kind of focus more on getting actually student-driven technologies which are compliant, as well as more training for instructors to be able to use them.
Nice. Just as a note, I was a teacher in a building where, now this is a while ago, all right, so I do recognize that, but we had a mishmash of stuff until they went to the community and actually passed a SPLOST or something, and that allowed them to create some money for making it all happen together. But in our building, we had Mac Classics. Do you remember the Tower Macs? We had the brand new Apples that had come, the Macintoshes that had come out. And then we had some PCs that were like 386s or 486s. And by the way, boy, those things were slow compared to where we are today. But, it's funny because until the community really kind of came together to say, our schools need to have something better than this. And, we literally were working on all this technology that was just really, even by the time it's in our building, it's outdated completely. So, that's a big deal.
It is. I think having the funding available to have actual access to technology, like mostly software to a large extent, is important. The other thing I've seen is that, like, for example, we are a web technology, right? So all we need is a browser to work. We don't need anything else. So having kind of, making sure that the students have that device, most students are increasingly having it. That's probably the least. I would say there's so much investment getting into education right now, but that is probably the highest ROI investment, like getting every student one device that actually works, maybe comes with a Wi-Fi so that you can access technology, maybe limited basis. Google and others have various other technologies out there. So I think that is a solvable problem, and I think that's getting solved fast. The training piece, I do feel one thing though, is that, a lot of teachers we find are so innovative. They've been teaching in the classroom, but they're also tech savvy, or they're learning the new technologies, and they have a real good understanding of the classroom dynamics. They can actually, figure out ways to use these technologies and design it for the school. So this whole instructional design side of things, it's a new area right now, but I think a lot of teachers who are teaching right now, maybe they don't want to teach. Maybe they want to kind of, do something else in life. This is a great area for them to get into, I would say, instructional design, where they can connect the dots between good technology and good pedagogical practices, and kind of how do you connect them and kind of help the school out. Could be I'm seeing more and more instructors getting in that direction, but could be a great thing that can happen for us.
I can imagine. I can only imagine. And actually what you just mentioned is going to lead me to where I wanted to go next, which is, and especially that would be one way that it would help transform it if your instructors are going, hey, this is pretty cool, and I'm going to go into this part of the world. But, what do you think is the possibility of technology and design and, transforming education to actually take it to a different level? What do you think?
Yeah, no. So in terms of technology and education, I truly believe one thing, which is technology can only solve part of the puzzle. The other big puzzle is the pedagogy or the pedagogical practices, because a teacher is not just reading a textbook, right? The teacher is taking the textbook and kind of really make it come live for the students so that they can really connect to that subject matter, right? Same as technology. The technology is like a textbook, maybe well designed, but somebody has to really think about implementing and using in a way so that it actually is more valuable for the students. So I think these two things are very important, and both are kind of equally have its own rights. Like, we need good technology, which is easy to use and doesn't suck, basically, like students can go and do things. And on the other side, we need pedagogical research and there are a lot of learning research, by the way, has happened over the last 30, 40 years. I mean, there are really good materials out there where people have done research on active learning and how to use active learning in the classroom and how to make sure that the students are learning and retaining and they're socially, emotionally connected, and how to implement social emotional connections for learning outcome. There are so much of research that has happened. And part of the challenge is that a lot of that research is kind of either living in some books or is implemented in one or two courses. It hasn't scaled well, right? Because any manual practice is very hard to scale. Like, some teachers does very well, but maybe for a few courses, but it doesn't translate to other teachers doing it. But the benefit of technology is that if you can merge these things, like good technology and good pedagogical practices, and design it well, it can scale. You know, we have clients now where they started with a few courses. Now they're implementing us across hundreds and thousands of courses now. And going from a few courses and getting it right to 1,000 courses is a matter of a year or two. And that wasn't possible without technology. I think that is the real opportunity in technology, is to scale really high quality pedagogical practices using good technology experiences. And I think we are in the early stages of that right now, but I expect to see that's going to be a big transformation happening in the next 5 years or so.
I like that. You know, one of the things that, I mean, we haven't gotten into this, but one of the things that people talk about is that, you know, there's some difficulties in having access to higher education, and that it's kind of expensive and so forth. And maybe they could be, you could help prepare them better for, you know, being ready to do the job. Can you talk a little bit about, can tech solve these problems? I mean, what do you think for higher education?
Yeah, I think it can't solve all the problems, but it can actually make it much more less expensive to solve the problems. Because at the end of the day, we need the right innovators to kind of scale these, you know, products and services. But what I see is that there are two sides to it. There's an access side, there's a quality side of things, right? The access side, I think the cost is reducing, right? As more and more colleges, universities, high schools are making online or digital versions of their courseware offering, because of these are driven by technology, the cost is reducing right now. So we are hearing about, you know, degrees used to cost like $30,000, $40,000. Now we have like $10,000 options. Now you can get a certification in a MOOC for like maybe a couple of $100, and you're getting some, you know, kind of credentials at a much lower cost, may not be the same quality. So I think that problem is already getting solved, and it has been solved to a large extent, especially using technology, especially using online or digital technologies. I think the real challenge, though, is in the quality side right now. Because, you know, traditionally, you know, in higher education, right, I mean, there is enough research out there, enough polls out there where people are not seeing enough value in higher education, especially in K-12. That might be the case in some cases where parents and students are not saying, okay, why would I want to go to a school? Maybe I just do it homeschooling. Like, maybe I can do it myself, right? And those kind of questions come up. And the reason is sometimes the quality is not as good, or the perception of quality is not as good. So I think technology can play a big role in that area by kind of making it easy and seamless. Like, if I'm in a class and I want to get access to my materials, I don't have to wait and ask my teacher before the class or send him or an email. I mean, you can just log in and click one button and get access to the material. So there basic aspect of quality, which is just about access, could be very easily solved. And the other part of quality, which is around higher engagement, more data around what's happening. If somebody's if some students are not engaged at all, I mean, how do we know that? Yeah, the website knows that, because that's how Facebook tracks everything we do. Like, that technology is already out there. Like, how do we use those kind of data points to be able to make sure that every student has a baseline level quality? I think is a bigger problem right now. And that, I think that's where the technology can have a real big impact if it's designed properly.
It's awesome. It's, we have this equipment around for a reason, right? This is good.
And people are using it. I mean, the whole thing is, I think the really interesting thing is that, if you think about like most high schoolers or middle schoolers, my daughter's like 5, 7. I mean, they are using technology. They know about any cell phone more than I do. Like, they know exactly what to do if they run into a problem. Not everybody, but most kids are like that right now, right? They're already connected with their classmates. They're using, Discourse or some other tools. So the good news is that the users are used to using certain type of technology. It's a matter of designing the learning experience, keeping that user in mind. And if you can just solve that problem, I think a lot of that could be solved.
I think that's cool. Just as a side note, I mean, because it's interesting, because like the age of your youngest daughter, actually the oldest one, I mean, they don't know what it was like before all this type of technology was there, and forget the little the modem sound, ding 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 ding. They don't have to worry about any of that, and in this whole world of the cloud, where everything it's all out there. And so companies don't need to have them have expensive equipment. I mean, I remember a time when, you had to have this equipment in order to access, and having it, being able to download or being able to go out there and access it with just, having something like a Chromebook or something like that. You don't even need a laptop. That is so powerful. And it just, but I'm kind of jealous, because it's funny, them really not knowing or understanding what was there before, or where we've come from. So I think that's interesting. But
yeah, I mean, I think most of the kids and as well, more older students, I mean, I think they have this, like, they are true digital natives now. That's interesting, because they don't see the physical world and the digital world quite different. Right. I mean, if you are having a conversation right now, or let's say when I was going to school or my grad school or undergrad, I mean, my conversation was actually talking to somebody in person. Like, I'll make an appointment, go and see them. We'll discuss something specific, and that's a conversation. But now, given a lot of that is digitally right now, and that's their real world, and I think that's the world we are living in. So I think we just have to keep that in mind as we are designing these experiences, because anything which is more complicated than that, or it just replicates the whole world in a digital sense, is not going to work, because they're truly digital natives. So I think that is why I kind of see this, really trying to understand the modern learner and kind of their behavior, and kind of really hacking into their like psychology to be able to design those learning experiences are super important right now.
You are so right, especially because, it's just a side note. I've challenged myself to at least, I've told a couple of my friends, I said, whatever you do, don't let me be someone who goes, no, I click the button. Is that what I do? Because I like the fact that the podcast helps keep me up and in a little bit more current world. And I constantly am pushing myself to learn different technologies that go wrong with it. And, but you're so right about, they're these digital natives. They think differently. They problem solve differently, because we might go to the past to come forward to figure out what we're dealing with in the present. And no, they're already there. They're beyond that. So good stuff. We're getting close to finishing up, Shaunak. And before we close, I got to get you to do this first. Can you do like one more explanation of why the listeners should make sure they give Yellowdig a look?
Yeah. So if you are a student, which you are kind of going through the whole, high school or middle school experience or early childhood, and if you're listening to this podcast, I mean, you want to figure out ways to be more, make your learning more exciting and fun, so that you are actually engaged with your classmates better. So take a look at Yellowdig, and if you like it, just tell your teacher to take a look at us. And if you're teaching right now, school or university, or you're connected with this whole teaching ecosystem, I think one thing that we are doing right now is to try to make learning more social, active, and engaging, and as a result more experiential, so that we are not just learning on our own. And I think there's a big need right now. So we are one of those companies that are working with schools, and we are now happy to have over 100 universities which have signed up with us and scaling with us. So we can learn more at our website. It's yellowdig.co. And if you want to get in touch with us, you will find a way to get in touch with us. There are various ways in the website, or you can easily find me in LinkedIn. I kind of hang out in LinkedIn a lot. So Shaunak Roy, if you search me, you should find me and send me a message. I'd love to connect.
Excellent. And I will have those links in the show notes so that they can reach out to you and go to your website as well. Cool stuff. So before we finish up, I've got two last questions that I just like to ask my guests. And the first one goes like this. If you have so much going on that you become overwhelmed, how do you overcome the desire to quit?
Well, it's life of an entrepreneur, right? It's just like pushing through what anybody else, I would say. My trick to that is always trying to find a purpose. I have worked for a bunch of years for big companies, and I know how it is. Loving your work is so difficult and easy to quit. But I think with Yellowdig, and one thing I try to focus on is to kind of really find a purpose. Like, why am I doing this? Which is interesting and connects me to my long-term vision. So that keeps me going, difficult times. And we, of course, run into lots of difficult times running a company. So that's my trick. So keep having a purpose, I would say, is a very important thing. Whatever is your kind of interest. I don't know if that's a good answer, but that's kind of how my thing is.
Oh, that's a great answer. I love it. Thank you. Last question. Do you have a teacher in your past who made a difference in your life? If so, who was it? And what would you say if given a chance to say thank you?
Well, I have many, many teachers. I went to I was lucky enough, right? I grew up a very average middle-class family, but I was lucky enough to get into IIT Bombay, which is like tremendous institution, really smart teachers, and went to MIT, really, really smart teachers over there. So I learned a lot, but I think I was thinking about it. I would say that, I would say I would kind of give a different answer to this. I would say my peers are probably my biggest teacher, which is one of the reasons I was interested in, starting Yellowdig, because I always felt that I learn as much, if not more, from some of my peers who I was kind of build a relationship over the years. If I look back, the reason I decided to come to the US and do my master's is because of my small group of peers that kind of motivated me every day to kind of do my best and kind of do what we have to do. Same goes when I was getting into my undergrad in India in IIT. It's a very competitive exam to get into it. But, it so happens in high school and middle school, I kind of found my tribe through kind of being out there, and kind of they were motivating, and we were, exchanging notes all the time and learning with one another. I would say that, my biggest learning has probably happened from my peer group, even though I had lucky enough to have lots of really good teachers over the years.
That's a great answer. I love it. Good stuff. Shaunak, it was awesome talking with you. Thanks so much for talking with me about Yellowdig and the future of education and how they get involved in all this other cool stuff about technology. This was a cool dive into, how technology can be helpful for all of us. And I appreciate it. Wishing you the very best in all you do.
Thanks a lot, Stephen. Thanks for having me.
Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12 is excited to be a member of VoiceEd Radio. VoiceEd Radio. Your voice is right here. Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12 is a proud member of the Education Podcast Network. Podcasts for educators, podcasts by educators. The opinions expressed on Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12 are those of the guests and host. Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12 is intended to share ideas, advice, and suggestions for classroom teachers and school administrators. Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12 is produced for educational purposes. Thanks for listening, and I hope you'll share it with your friends.